Hi, welcome back to Unique Minds of the Okanagan. I'm Rob O'Day. I'm on location in Kelowna with Unknown Persona, a multi-talented artist based out of Kelowna. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to talk.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you introduce yourself, basically, and then we'll dive into it.
My name is Jacob Crystal. I go by the artist name Unknown Persona, and that was originated from not knowing what to do with my life and not knowing who I am, so my persona is kind of unknown. I have all these different interests and skills and talents, from singing and dancing to rapping and martial arts and stuff, so I just basically love to entertain in all shapes and forms.
I love that. How long have you been doing music? Like, how long have you been pushing yourself as an artist? When did that start?
I guess it technically started in high school, so about probably 2010, but I haven't been professionally doing it for about 5 years.
Okay, so you're doing pretty good for being the 5-year mark. You're doing real well.
I like to say 3 because I don't count when COVID happened, those 2 years.
Fair enough.
But yeah, 5 years pretty much.
That's awesome. So, the beginning of your process when you became choosing to be an artist, which did you choose form? Like, which form did you choose first? Did you choose dancing? Did you choose music? Did you choose... You do magic too, so that's kind of a unique aspect that you don't hear often, so...
I think at first it was like drawing and stuff. I used to make my own little comic books. And then I guess it was magic tricks. And that's when I like discovered entertainment and like getting responses out of people. And then I just loved music and movies, and it's something I've always looked up to. And so, yeah, I guess music was next, and now I'm pursuing acting, taking film school and stuff, so.
That's wicked. Acting, it's a whole other venture. I did background acting, and
yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
How are you enjoying it?
It's fun, yeah.
It's a totally different experience once you go behind the scenes. Like, I'm a movie person, so when you're watching the movie and then you realize the background, you start to watch it more often.
Exactly, yeah. I notice that now.
Do they make you do the whole watermelon fruit speaking under your breath, like invisible talking of watermelons?
Oh,
and
not
all
yet.
That?
Any scenes I did, I've only done 2 movies, and one was I was just a jogger running by, and the other one we were these religious people in a cult, and we just were praying in a circle.
That's awesome. I did a bunch of Hallmark films where you have to talk in the background of like a diner scene, and all they make you do is mouth watermelon and different types of fruit and vegetables.
Interesting. Okay.
Really, like, under your breath and just mouthing it. And it's funny because as soon as they cut scene, you tend to laugh with the other background actors, because it's really difficult to try and act when you're not talking. And I find that is a very difficult thing.
And not start laughing or something?
Yeah, and then the complete opposite with music, where you're so energetic and upfront with it, right? It's acting's just... I find it blends really well, especially with like music videos and being able to act as on stage. It is kind of like when you're performing, you are acting, right?
Yep, I would say so, yeah.
And I've seen a lot of your performances online that you share, and I find it really entertaining to see that you can dance, do backflips off the stage, and still get up and perform without being out of breath.
Yeah.
How do you manage that? Do you practice by just running around?
Basically, I was also really into parkour, so I guess I have a good cardio.
Okay.
And yeah, I would just practice jumping around my room while singing and dancing. I saw something Miley Cyrus would do, is run on a treadmill while doing her song.
Oh, wow.
So I haven't done that yet, but
I can imagine that would help, especially if you're a front person has to move around a lot versus like musicians. We speak a lot with musicians who play an instrument or play drums, but when hip hop is a totally different entity in the music industry that I find is very underrated. People enjoy hip hop, but they don't give the artists themselves enough credibility for how much they're jumping around, still maintaining breath to perform the songs. It's a lot of work.
yeah, I don't really show it, but after I walk off stage, I'm like almost passing out.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's one thing I find is like the moment I step off stage, I'm on my knees like hyperventilating because all of everything I put into it, right?
I should have stretched.
Quite literally, especially the older I get and playing in metal, when you're doing the stupid leg stances and you're dropping, oh man, I pull legs constantly. It's quite entertaining. When you're writing, so I want to dive into the music aspect, like when you want to start a song, because hip hop is very freeing versus, I find, compared to rock and metal where you have to speak in metaphor. Hip hop, you can do it and say whatever you want. There's really no limit as to what emotions you can present. So when you're diving into a song and you want to create a new beat and then the lyrics, like how do you start your process?
I would say there's probably two different ways. Either I already have an idea pop into my head and I try and lay that down through a beat and start writing it, or I'll get into my voice memos. Or what I usually do now is I'll find a beat that I really like and I'll just record myself freestyling, and eventually I'll say dope things here, dope things there. Sometimes it's nonsense, but it's fun to like put it all together like a puzzle after the fact and start building it.
Yeah, that is a great process to go about because I feel like it's freeing, but at the same time it keeps you in structure, because sometimes if you're going to it without any idea, you end up with the weirdest concepts and you end up throwing those in the garbage. Do you find like there's a running theme that I find through musicians that transcends their genre, and that is that when they're writing lyrics, it's almost as if something is helping them that they don't know. Like lyrics are just flowing through them and they don't know where they're coming from. And then down the road, these lyrics end up making sense. Does that happen with you as well?
Yes, all the time. I've always wondered, like, are these words being sent to me from somewhere else? Like, because sometimes you'll say things that are just that's the best line I've ever said. Where did that come from? How did I just say it like that? And then years later, you're like, wow, this song is super relevant to like things or issues today. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Either things just didn't change, or it just, that's how music works, I guess. I don't know.
I often find that we're the bards of nowadays. You know what I mean? Like bards used to tell the stories and keep those stories going. And I feel like nowadays as musicians, there's a lot of things that are happening that have happened through the last 50 years that are kind of repeating. But us as artists get these weird glimpses of the future through lyrics that we tend to put down, and they become relevant, like you said, down the road. Like there are songs today that are becoming popular that were written in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? That are now extremely relevant to everything going on. So music is this weird form of art, because I find, like, I love painting and I love dance, but it doesn't transcend in the same aspect of music where a specific dance isn't going to last, thousands of years, or hundreds of years, because it'll change. But the song that's recorded and written, that it will always be. And there's something magical about that, I find.
Yeah, I agree.
Music is, I don't know, especially with hip hop, it's freeing. Like I was saying earlier, it's being able to express yourself in to micro aspects through lyrics, where people hear it and connect with you, is powerful. And I find that hip hop is a massive entity in the music industry, and it's only getting bigger. Do you see you weaving your way in different directions as not just being a hip hop artist, but maybe expanding into having live bands or adding doing something theatrical because you do so much?
Yes, I have been recently drifting off towards different genres and stuff, because I've noticed not everybody's into rap, but pop and rock and dance and R&B can connect to almost everyone, and those also bleed into hip hop as well. So I find myself more of a singer than a rapper, so I'll always have that and do hip hop, but I definitely want to be a singer and make all kinds of music.
Is it a challenge for you to, with hip hop, is it difficult for you to find your place as not being a strict hip hop artist, but as a singer, as a dancer, as an artist, not just a rapper?
Yeah, I do find it a little difficult, because on one side it's just the difficulty of decision making, and even should I change my name, just be Jacob, or stay unknown persona? And there's also just the difficulties of being put into that category. Oh, you're a rapper, we won't take you as seriously as this guy who's just doing everything else or whatever, you know.
Do you find that, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this. Do you find that it's difficult being an artist who is extremely diverse, can do multiple things like instruments and stuff, when you're dealing with artists who don't, and you see them progressing further? Because this is something like, this is a personal question from me to you as an artist to artist, because I see that like as an artist who plays multiple instruments and writes their own instrumentals, I find it's harder for people to relate to my music because it's not the basic boom bap beat or the basic trap beat. I'm trying, like when you're trying to expand musically and be more diverse, it's hard to find that connection until people realize what you're trying to do. Do you find when you're writing music that your music's gravitating, like you said earlier, you're becoming more of an artist, so you use different aspects, R&B, hip hop? Like which genres of yours is the most powerful in your mind that is taking off? Because you do a ton, and you've worked with a ton of huge artists.
I'll say hip hop is the first one, but other than that, I would have to say R&B and pop.
Interesting, because R&B is one I've never fully dove into. So I'm going to start picking your brain on the R&B aspect, because hip hop is, everybody loves hip hop, but R&B that's soul.
Yeah.
That's like blues. There's something different. There's almost a spiritual aspect to R&B, which I really admire. Is it hard to write R&B? Like that soul versus hip hop, which is attitude. You know what I mean? Like I find that would be a hard transition for me personally. Do you find that difficult to like bounce back and forth between the two with what you want to do?
I don't really find it difficult, no. I do a similar thing where I just freestyle when I make music, but when it's R&B or songs where I'm not rapping, I find it much easier because I'm like freestyling slower. I don't know, so my brain has more time to think, and I just connect more to the elements and different corners of R&B and what they talk about, like, you know, love songs and relationships and how you feel and stuff.
I think that's really cool because most guys avoid our emotions.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
being an artist who is like willing to open up and talk about love and relationships and stuff, I think is powerful. Instead of like running away from how you feel, you're expressing it through beauty, if that makes sense. Because music is and will always be a universal language. You don't have to speak the same language as someone to be able to go jam with them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I find it extremely powerful when an artist can express themselves in full and they're not putting on like an image. Because a lot of what turned me off of hip hop for years was that image, that having to be hard. You know what I mean? It's like you don't have to be a talented rapper, and I think there's a lot of people out there who prove that. Like, image is one thing, but the art that you create is really what kind of separates you from everyone else. Because everyone can do trap, everyone can rap if you really put into the effort. But what you're saying and the message that you're trying to put out is really what matters. And I find with R&B, like you were saying, it's love, it's relationships, it's empowering. I feel like there's more, like we need more of that in music. So I'm very thankful that you do that, especially in our scene, which is, Kelowna is very based, like Vancouver and Kelowna are very connected in the sense of the Stomp Down crew, the Battle Axe Warriors. Like they kind of created that hip hop scene here that died out and is still trying to cling, but that sound is old now, and there's a new sound coming, and it's cool to see the artists who are branching out from that to prove who they are in our scene. And I feel like you're one of them, which is why I wanted to sit down, because there's a lot of hip hop artists here, but there's not as many in my mind that are as diverse as you are in the ability to be able to, you're an entertainer. You're not a hip hop artist. You're a performer.
Yes.
And that's magical, because I think a lot of people focus on one aspect of what they're good at, and then they stick to that, and they don't branch out. So to be able to sit down with you and hear, like, diving into your perspective, because in my mind, the show's based off unique people, and you're very unique in the aspect of an artist. So
Thank you.
when we got into music, and I'm sidetracking, and I apologize. When it comes to your lyrics and the way you want to write, like, what is your favorite topic to speak about besides, obviously, relationships and love?
I guess originally it started with what I found to be truth, or maybe a little bit of conspiracy, or just making people think. I wanted to make people go, what did you just say? And question things around them. And I guess also like the fantastical, like the unknown, aliens and stuff, like who knows, magic, wizards, or things that aren't real, things that are basically just things that I enjoy and think about a lot.
I like that.
Yeah.
What do you find has been your biggest difficulties becoming an artist to this day?
I would have to say the growth. Trying to grow your fan base and get more people to hear you and know you, and basically just expand and get out there. I think that's what I struggle with the most.
Do you find it's difficult having to separate yourself from being the musician and then having to have like social media presence? Or does that work really well with you? Like, do you find it's easy to be an artist and social media artist?
I find it pretty easy. I think it blends together very well.
I find it difficult, and I feel like I find that like being a dancer might be definitely help towards that, because you can dance to your own music and things like that help. Do you find it's difficult? Like, what avenues do you struggle besides just trying to get heard? Because it's a very common one for musicians, is trying to get your music out there. But do you find it's hard to maintain that hype after a new song? Because I find that's very difficult nowadays.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Like, you used to be able to drop a song and people would be sharing it a month later and like, this is still fire. But now it's like 2 days. So I find it's definitely difficult to like get yourself out there. Do you find you have a specific platform that works best for you?
Yeah, I would say Instagram and Spotify
Okay.
and Facebook.
I find it's good to have the diversity of all of them, but I feel it's hard to work on all of them at once while still trying to maintain being an artist, right? That's where it's like, I think that's become the modern day, the biggest struggle for artists, is how do we, that's what I mean by the balance point. Like, how do
all
we,
of it. It's like,
like, how can you write the music, live the life that you have to still do with work, perform, then on top of that, you got to create content. You've got to be original content. You can't just like stand in front of your phone. People don't really care about that. It's got to be original and unique and cool, but just thinking of the content takes so much time that it's taking away from writing. Does that become an issue with you? Do you find that you struggle with like trying to balance writing, being the artist, and also trying to grow your following online, because it's a totally different world nowadays?
Yeah, maybe a little bit, because it can definitely be overwhelming with a lot of different corners and avenues you got to deal with. It's like a lot on your plate. Sometimes you don't pay attention to other things that you should be, or you don't put as much effort into one thing you should have. It makes it kind of not as good as you want it to be.
Do you find that when you're which do you prefer, performing, writing? Like, what is your favorite aspect of being the artist? Like, what is when you finally that is done, you're like, yes, I've done it?
I would say performing. Yeah,
It's just such a good feeling.
Yeah.
There's nothing better. I wish like we could express the feeling of the moment a set is done to the people behind the camera, like who don't perform music, because it's like the one thing that the show is like based on is trying to get that. I hate to say spiritual, but it is a very spiritual thing when you're connecting with people musically, versus like just basic conversations. There's just something magical about music that I love, and I wish you could like there was words that could describe it, but there's not. It's like it's just a feeling, and that feeling doesn't have a word.
Yeah.
And it's that's all that I can say for that. But I find that being a musician, performing is like the ultimate goal. You want to get there, but I find we also tend to rush it. And that was one of my biggest downfalls as an artist when I started hip hop, was I rushed into performing without having a sound or even really being good. Like, I listen to songs from when I started and they're terrible. You know what I mean? And I'm like, why? How did people even come to my shows? Growth as an artist is magical. Do you find that over the 5 years that you've been an artist, you've changed the way you write or the things you write about or how you write?
Yeah, I definitely think it's evolved. Probably don't write about certain things that I know might not be appropriate or might trigger, or because, you know, we now live in a world of you want to not get canceled and stuff, so you got to be careful, but still try and say your truth and how you feel, but respect everybody.
With the scene growing and you performing with like the new crew and getting in and being able to do shows with them, what is your next goal? What is your, I want to make it to here?
My very next goal is to start putting on my own shows, like headlining or doing gigs, and have people opening for me instead of being an opener. And I would say after that is to try and do touring, and mostly like grow the fan base. You know, just keep growing.
Do you, as you build your brand, a known persona, do you think that you'll ever expand into having bands, like a band behind you?
I do think that, yeah. I've recently jammed with a band for the first time, that rhymed, at Freddy's Brew Pub, and it was an open mic. And so you had the option, either you could just play your guitar or the band here could play with you. And I'm like, sure, let's do it. And it just felt so good and natural. And like, think, and I've been told many times I should have a band. I'm like, oh, And now I know what it feels like and what they mean. I'm like, oh, yeah, so.
I agree. I've been, as we were lining up for the interview, I wanted to go through your music, like your actual catalog, and not just like the little snippets. But I agree. You need a band. You need drums and a bass and a keyboard, especially with singing and being R&B with hip hop. There's something different about hitting play on a keyboard or on a computer versus having that count in of a drummer and the whole energy. That can,
like, feeling the live acoustics of it. Like,
and there's a weird connection. Like, you're not talking to them, but they're mentally, we're all synced up and we're hitting that 4 count, we're hitting the 1 counts. Oh, we all paused. Like, it's just, there's this weird telepathy when you're working with a band, and that's right there. That is what I absolutely love about being an artist.
It's real
not
and natural.
It's not to be performing. It's not to see the reaction. It's that weird telepathical connection that you have with anyone if you pick up an instrument and you're jamming, and then after like a 20-minute jam, you're like, man, that was dope. Like, that right there is what music is meant to be. And I feel that that's what's lacking in music nowadays, is it's very structured. As an artist, like when you were growing up, who was your biggest inspiration? And why?
My biggest inspiration. I have a few answers, because the earliest one I can think of is kind of silly. It's a cartoon character named Chip Skylark in a show called Fairly Odd Parents.
Yes.
And he was kind of like a amalgamation of Justin Bieber and Justin Timberlake. And it just, I don't know, the music, the songs they would do were just like, whoa, I kind of want to do that. And then growing up, obviously Michael Jackson was just huge in our home, and he just was something else. I was like, whoa. Michael Jackson was just incredible. He was probably one of my biggest inspirations, yeah. For music, yeah.
I love that. I'm so used to talking to metalheads, and they're always like, "Oh, Ozzy Osbourne" and stuff. So it's refreshing, because I love Michael Jackson, like one of the greatest artists ever, and will always be one of the greatest. And strict, like, you want structured artists, that man, you do not mess up, or you do not have a job. He may have been super nice, but you don't mess up his music. And I think that that's what made him great, was he was very, this is how it goes, but very kind to the people who did it. inspiration-wise, I find it funny that you chose a cartoon character, because what made me want to be a musician, besides my mom being a musician and my dad being a musician, and Goofy movie,
Yes.
Powerline.
Yeah.
Okay, that is who I was like, this is music.
Yes.
Eye to eye, bro. It was mind-blowing for me as a kid, and still to this day I put that song on for my kids now, and they're just like dancing around, and I'm like, oh yes, this is awesome, you guys are gonna be rock stars. But it's funny that you choose like a cartoon character, because inspiration comes from anywhere, right? Like, why not a cartoon character? If it's inspiring, it's inspiring.
Yep.
Do you have people that you would have as openers? Like, do you have people in mind? Any younger people that you see or know that are up and coming?
Yep, I do have a little bit, and then I would also probably invite the people who had me open up for them, support each other, kind of thing, give back.
I think that that's one thing that music, as a promoter who puts on like music festivals and has to like choose a headliner, I don't base headliners on popularity. I base them on their sound, and depending on the show always builds up to the headliner. So I'm not gonna like, the headliner's not gonna be the last person in the band or of the night, if that makes sense. So headliner's not gonna be last. If they're not a super heavy band, they'll be placed earlier in the night, but they're still the headliner, if that makes sense to me, because you wanna, when you're booking a show, you want that evolution of sound to get to a point where people are going to enjoy it. There's not going to be like a group that sends somebody, the whole crowd away. You know what I mean? You want to build it so it's like a nice flowing waterfall. And finding artists that work well together is the key to making a really good show. Because you could just book anybody you want. You could book any hip hop artist, and the show can be terrible in the end of the day if it doesn't flow well and they don't work well. So I'm curious. I'm intrigued to see where you take it, because there could be a billion promoters. Like, as a promoter, talking to somebody who's going to be a promoter, I find that inspiring, because a lot of the promoters don't work together. They tend to, this is our crowd, our fan base, our show. And I feel like the reason that our music scene has become so pocketed is because they're not working together. So it'd be cool to see all of the promoters locally working together to create the best shows that we could for the scene.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's something that is slowly happening, which is really nice to see. And I want to see you headlining. Like, I want to see Unknown Persona popping off with people opening up for my district. Make it happen. But the whole, like, I find, and do you find, like, do you get to do all ages shows?
I have.
Do you enjoy them more than you do 19 plus shows?
Yeah.
I find they're the best.
Yeah.
And not just because, but it's because, like, those kids watch you, those kids are going home, and they're rapping in the mirror. That right there is the key to being a musician, is to inspire the next generation. And I find that here especially is very hard to try and book all ages shows. There's a handful of venues that are willing to do it, especially with metal. It's very hard. But like hip hop, because hip hop is looked at like, oh, they swear, and you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of negative things that go with it. It's very hard to like promote a all ages hip hop show, but that's kind of what you need to do. I feel that your skills and talent is only starting. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I see what you mean.
you're growing, and like you're I don't want to say you're still at a young age as an artist, but like 5 years is where it starts to click in that this is what I want as a goal, a career, a job, and then you do that. So there's another 5 years ahead of you before you're Merkules level.
Yeah.
Before, like, they've been grinding for 15 years, and it's that 10-year mark. Doesn't matter what genre you're in. If you can make that, hit that 10 years, that's where you start to make it. And that's the most defeating thing as an artist, because you've got to grind for 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's 10 years of music. That's 10 years of struggle. That's 10 years of everything. But at the end of the day, that's what's worth it. And it's cool to see, because I've watched a lot of artists grow in the Okanagan, and I'm like, well, I'm going to be pushing on 40 in the next couple of years. So I've been hosting shows in the Okanagan for over 25 years. And to see where it started to where it is today is mind-blowing. And to see the diversity within just Kelowna, not even Penticton, but like, our artists here need more recognition.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the show's about. And it's artists like you, I feel, need... I'm a metalhead, I'm a metal promoter, and a hip-hop head, so I'm naturally going to say everybody needs more attention, but you appeal to a bigger audience than the metalheads, than just hip-hop artists. And I think that your word could spread further, and message could spread further if it could get out there than most others in the Okanagan, due to what you sing about, how real it is, and the fact that it's not fake. What advice would you give to an up-and-coming artist who is trying to get themselves started and their foot in the door? Because that is the hardest aspect of becoming a musician.
Foot in the door is in shows?
Even if they wanted to start writing.
My best advice, I would have to say, is to just do it. And let go of self-doubt, let go of people telling you can't do it. I believe that if you really want it, you can get and do whatever you want.
Especially if you believe in yourself. And I think that's the key thing. Because...
And like, don't give up. Make sure you love it.
I think that is that right there is a key part too, because you really have to love what you do, especially if you want to make it a career, right? Like, if you want to make this, you better love it. Otherwise, it's just going to be like the dishwashing job that you bailed on when you were 14, right? Like, yeah, music, it's not called a music career, or it's called a music career because that's what it is. It starts with baby steps, and I feel like artists, we tend to try and do lunges. We're trying to take mile steps. This is where it takes...
How do I get it as fast as possible? But
like I was saying, it takes that 10 years, right? Like, if you could give yourself advice, you now, from when you started, you'd probably be in a way different position right now, right? But that's kind of it's the curveball that we're given as artists. And I find that's really what makes you an artist and separates you. There's a lot of people out there who can write music. Not a lot of people who can write music that connects with other people. And I think you're on the right path. I have to ask one question. How did you land Snoop on a track? Not even just Snoop, the game as well. How was it? Was it like was it a contest? Was it collaboration?
Basically, there's a producer named Anno Domini, and he's connected with all those artists, and he sells non-exclusive verses and stuff.
Okay.
Hip hop artist I know, Hazy Made, told me about him and connected me with him.
Okay.
So I got involved into that.
That is so trippy. No, I appreciate you sitting down with me and doing this, because like I said, I'm used to talking with metalheads and singer-songwriters. So to hear an R&B and hip-hop artist perspective on the music scene and what can change and what can be better is kind of, it's inspiring, because all we as a collective want is a strong, diverse music scene. So I appreciate you sitting down with me and having me at your house and doing this conversation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate it, bro. And we'll catch you guys next time.